Hello, all, and welcome to this special Encore presentation of the interview I, your host W. Andrew James, conducted with Sam Babayan from the Los Angeles band The Dirty Diamond in episode 4. I have been inundated with requests to hear the entire interview through our email address, admin@fufgpodcast.com, and our hotline number, which is 818-641-5290. We will return on Friday, February 24th with episode 5. Okay, let's get to it. I'd like to welcome Sam Babayan from the LA-based band The Dirty Diamond to the show today.
Thank you, W. Andrew James.
Now, Sam and I have known each other, or of each other, for over 2 decades from different bands that I have seen Sam play in around the Los Angeles area. Sam, I do appreciate you coming on to the show today to discuss music and our season-long topic, love in the time of COVID. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just jump right in with the questions. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your band, The Dirty Diamond? How did the group of you come to form a band?
Yeah, The Dirty Diamond formed actually in 2009 is when it started. It came out of the ashes of a band called Slow Motion Rain, which I was in, and that was a group of really amazing musicians in the LA area. We all went to school together, actually, and in college we started to form the band. And originally we were nothing but a Pink Floyd cover band, really, along with some other classic rock numbers that we would throw in, like Hendrix and things like that. But we started to write our own music at some point, our own original music, and we had a lot of support from the colleges around LA and SoCal and the high schools. We would play a lot of schools and colleges at that time, and it kind of formed. At some point we had a record deal, which helped us gain more momentum in terms of touring and recording and gaining experience as young guys in the studio. And that kind of evolved into The Dirty Diamond, which really consists of myself as the main writer and the singer, guitar player. But my band is also consisted of my drummer, bass player, and guitar player, who are amazing musicians and studio and session players, and they go on tour with a lot of other quite successful bands, and that's kind of what they do for a living. But The Dirty Diamond was really our labor of love. It was just something that we poured all of our hearts into, and here we are. It's really kind of a re-insurgence of rock music, of classic rock. We call it brand new vintage because it's just us single-handedly taking responsibility for moving rock music into the future, into the now, from all the past and all the good stuff that we grew up on, really, it's been a wonderful journey so far.
I just love that term, brand new vintage. It's like you're playing homage to the past, but looking towards the future.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you have a specific message you try to convey with your music?
At some point along the line in the whole journey, I started to really focus on more like the positive and hopeful aspects of humanity. So much rock music is just about, I don't know, debauchery, partying, heartbreak, destruction, usually the genre generally tends to lean towards the dark side, a darker side of the human experience. I tend to write more towards the lighter side of things. I think, I don't know, about the death of the ego, and I examine aspects of life and hope and grace and forgiveness, transformation, the process of human and individual evolution and growth. I touch on subjects of healing from the past, healing ancestral trauma, healing individual and collective trauma, and moving into a really constructive future, really. So I tend to write more towards on the positive things. I mean, even if I start to sing about a little bit of pain and sorrow, which is definitely a part of our human experience, I still pop in a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
That's wonderful. We all could use a little light in our lives. How has the band, as a working live band, coped with the limitations set by the pandemic?
We've kind of just been moving forward, just like any other band and group of musicians, doing the best with whatever the conditions currently are. We've certainly been quite productive in the studio in terms of writing new music, recording some new demos that will end up being our next album. We've been in the studio quite a bit. Throughout this time, I actually got approached by a few other artists that I know to help them produce their music and help them realize their works from some kind of a beginning phase to the end phase. Helping out a lot of other artists, working in the studio, keeping busy, writing new music, doing some online gigs like Zoom gigs, and I'll go on live sometimes on my Facebook or Instagram feed and do like a little acoustic set for my fans and my friends online. Interesting times. But we all find a way to navigate around it. My bass player, Derek Frank, released a new album. He went into the studio with producer Jim Scott, and he took advantage of the quiet time and he released a solo album. And Fernando Perdomo, my guitar player, has been continuously producing music himself. A lot of solo stuff and a lot of collective, like together stuff, Dirty Diamond stuff, for sure.
Fernando Perdomo has quite the output of music from his Reseda Ranch studios. He is always busy. Yeah,
he's definitely a very active guy.
I remember the moment I caught the music bug. For me, it was 5th grade. I heard the Logical Song by Supertramp and knew that I was hearing something special. When did you first discover music?
Wow, that's quite the question. I actually really loved music as a kid. I was a 6-year-old when my dad noticed that I was singing a lot of the music I was hearing on cartoons and TV shows, and he noticed I was singing everything in tune. So he asked me if I wanted to play piano, and I did. So he enrolled me in some really regimented classical music lessons. I was playing Bach and Beethoven, sweaty, nervous kid recitals when I was a 6, 7, 8-year-old. I really loved classical music, but as a kid, I was still trying to find something that I really connected with even deeper. That all happened when I was 13 and I heard the Beatles for the first time. And there wasn't a lot of people who listened to rock music in my environment at the time. So I thought I had found something really like original and special and different. I didn't really realize that they were one of the world's most famous bands. But I had a tape, I had a cassette that my dad gave me of Sgt. Pepper on one side and Abbey Road on the other. And that was my that was my music for like a whole year. I listened to that tape and I wanted to do what the Beatles were doing, which is playing guitar. So I switched from piano to guitar, and from all the years of piano lessons helped me to play the guitar on my own. I taught myself the guitar by ear with a cassette player, play, reverse, rewind, and pause, and play, rewind. So a lot of that was my main video game as a kid, was the guitar, So yeah, I say 13-year-old, the 13-year-old Beatles fan, that's kind of how it all started.
The Beatles are an excellent place to start your musical education. I never grow tired of listening to those timeless songs. Do you remember the first song that you wrote?
I do remember the first song I wrote. Well, the first song I wrote, I don't even count because I accidentally, unknowingly ripped off all the chords of a Pink Floyd song called Green is the Color and wrote my own words and my own melody to it. But the second song I wrote after that was, I think, something called Fancy Me or something like that. And at the time I listened to a lot of like UK indie kind of Brit pop bands, and there was a band that I really loved at the time and still do called Suede. And I was quite influenced by them. I remember that song was like such a Suede song. Yeah, my beginning songs had a beauty to it, but it was so influenced by what I was listening to.
How old were you?
I'd say 17, 18, yeah. Towards the end of high school.
When did you form your first band?
Just like in high school, me and my buddies were in choir. We loved this class. We were in choir singing, and we all found out that we're all major, like, Pink Floyd, Beatles fans, and Led Zeppelin and all that. And one of them played keyboards, one of them played bass. It was just almost like perfect, And we formed a band, and our choir teacher realized that we were doing this, so she was super encouraging of that. Quite often we would do our choir practice quite fast, and then she would give us a separate practice room to go and practice our own music, which was really awesome, just getting support from public education. It was quite a awesome example of public school system coming through for young music enthusiasts. And we would play in the quad during lunchtime. They would give us platform to play at talent shows, and we would always pass the audition and get into those talent shows. So we got a lot of love and support and encouragement from our school and our teachers, really, and our parents, which was wonderful.
That's so great that you got parental support, Sam. I know it can be an obstacle to many young artists.
Yeah.
What were your aspirations for the band at the time? Did you just want to play local clubs and schools, or did you plan on making it big?
No, soon after I realized that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I wanted to be like a guy in a band that plays and writes music and, clocks in not at like some factory or company, but at a recording studio and goes on tour. I very soon realized that that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And, maybe attaining a record deal in my early 20s kind of let my parents also know that I was really into it and serious and, was getting a little bit of acknowledgement from outside. So they kind of realized that I was really serious and into it. So they let me essentially quit college to pursue music full time.
Wow, that had to have been very important for you to get that kind of buy-in from your parents.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I mean, I understand the concern of a lot of parents. Music is quite an uncertain venture, but I think if you work at it really hard, that it transcends all the challenges that one would face. If you're really good and if you get good and if you're really into it and committed, I think that overrides any challenges. Furthermore, I have to say that for a long time, I even though a lot of my sibling, my brother is an awesome guitar player, and a lot of my close friends are session players, and they played their instruments for a living for parties and gigs that they would get hired. And for a long time, I refused to take that kind of gig because music was such a sacred thing for me. It's just such a precious thing that I didn't want to really play like top 40 hits at somebody's wedding for money. I would rather work a regular job, really, and then go home and play music at nights with my friends, the music that I write, the music that I love, rather than hiring myself out for other music that I didn't really love. You know what I mean? So for a long time, I chose that route, and I played the music that was in my heart, and it was quite an uncompromising method to go by. But eventually, at some point, it started to pay off because I started to get hired for what I do, not really for what someone else would want me to pretend to do. You know, I started to get the kind of projects and producing projects that are more in my wheelhouse, in terms of genre and style, you know.
That's just terrific. Your latest album was 2019's From the Stars, which has a wonderful collaboration with Andra Day called Going Through Changes. How did this collaboration come to be?
Well, when I first wrote that song, I knew that it was going to be like between my voice and some other woman's voice, like some kind of a blues mama. Like in my head, it was kind of like my own version of like Gimme Shelter. I actually couldn't find the right person to do the duet because I wrote it as a duet. I couldn't really find the right person for a long time. So we recorded it just as, just me doing all the vocals, the first version. But when we were doing it in the studio, I told the guys like, hey, let's record the song in two different keys. One would be the key in which I would sing in on my own, and the other would be the key in which the woman, the singer, who I didn't know who it was going to be, but like I recorded the track anyway, you know what I mean? In that key, anticipating and in search for the right person to sing it. And so we had that track, kind of the duet version, laying around, and my drummer, Shay Godwin, for a long time started to play with Andra Day. He's her drummer in her band. And, you know, they'd go on tours and such. And I went to see them at the Greek Theater. They invited me to go see them play, opening up for Lenny Kravitz. And so I was a fan of Andra. And then Andra started to show up at our shows, almost like undercover with no makeup and like a hoodie on in the front row dancing, you know. And I didn't realize it was Andra Day at first, but there she was coming to our shows kind of often, and I realized she's a fan of our band. So I asked my drummer Shay to ask her if she would want to do it, you know, and she said yes, and we were in the studio tracking that version, you know, and at some point it came out like a year later as a single. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, like to be in the studio with her and make that track happen. And it was a lot of fun. It was cool. It's a cool track. I love it even now.
To me, this song seems strangely prophetic to what 2020 has turned out to be. I'm sure you were writing from a much different place. What was your motivation to write this song, if I may ask?
Well, I mean, when I think about it, we're always going through changes, you know, and, you know, Ozzy's written a song about changes, and so has David Bowie, you know, but like my angle was kind of from a poem that it started, you know, with days so long and nights so strange, from a dire situation emerges the change, you know, kind of like when you're in a bind and you feel like there's nowhere else to go, like something gives, you know, and something happens. It's just, it's just a constant natural phenomenon, change, transformation, things, things switching up, things changing always. I mean, even before the pandemic, it was a very poignant song just about what was going on everywhere, all the time, it's quite a universal theme. I don't think the subject of change and transformation is ever really going to get tired.
It reminds me of the old adage which says, the only thing that never changes is that everything changes.
Yeah. Constant, the only constant is change. That's right.
Speaking of change, you have gone through some personal changes yourself this year. Congratulations on the birth of your daughter. Are you getting any sleep yet?
Uh, yeah, sometimes, it's kind of on and off, but we catch up on naps and get to sleep in on some Saturday mornings, like today. uh, yeah, it's been great. She's only a month and a half, but she's a super cool baby. She's pretty reasonable, in terms of sleep and crying and all that. It's been great. It's just been a lot of joy.
Being a new parent is hard enough, but I can't imagine having to deal with a pandemic at the same time. How has it been for you and your family thus far?
We've kind of used the pandemic to our advantage as much as possible. It's been all right. I mean, we had to sacrifice like things like family, like a lot of family gatherings and people getting together to celebrate. I was the only one allowed in the hospital when she was born and things like that. Sure, there's like pretty major concessions that we have to make, but it's also been nice because like the reclusive, solitary mode is quite conducive to raising a kid, you know. Um, just being home it's like you're asked to be home more, and that's what a newborn requires as well. And to be honest with you, it's kind of alleviated what otherwise may have been like major FOMO, like fear of missing out. Like if everybody, if everybody out there was gigging and I was just at home, like, I don't know, I might collapse from anxiety, but it's kind of worked out, I figure I waited quite a while to have a kid and I'm a little bit late in the game, but perfect timing. And, if there's any time to rear a child is now for sure.
I have one last question for you today. What is next for the Dirty Diamond?
Well, we're putting together an album right now of new music. A lot of it is influenced, very organically by my Armenian heritage. And so there's a lot of like folk and, old Armenian, scales and things that are in my music now infused in this new album. And it's kind of a timely thing as Armenia itself is going through so much hardship right now with the war that was just recently stopped. And, so just connecting my music with what's going on with, my life and my people, in Armenia and, writing a new album and moving on, adjusting with all the changes, whatever is going to happen. And, a lot of it remains to be seen, obviously, but as a lifetime musician and a writer, that's what you do is you keep writing, you keep creating and moving on, whatever that looks like.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Sam. Where can the audience go to listen and purchase music by the Dirty Diamond?
Yeah, thanks. A lot of it is on all the platforms, really. TheDirtyDiamond.com or on Bandcamp, TheDirtyDiamond.bandcamp.com. Sometimes people put the Dirty Diamonds like with an S at the end, so you might find other things under that name, but it's singular, The Dirty Diamond. And on Bandcamp, on iTunes, really anywhere.
Thank you so much, Sam, and I do hope the audience goes out and listens to your music. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, W. Andrew. I appreciate you.
I do hope you enjoyed this special encore presentation of episode 4. Please check out The Dirty Diamond at thedirtydiamond.bandcamp.com. We will see you Friday, February 24th for episode 5. Until then, thank you and have a great one. See you next time.